This is Top of Mind, the Dr. Patrick Slowinski Show.
Welcome back to Top of Mind, and today we're talking about sports, why they matter, and why they're becoming more popular. We'll take a closer look at martial arts like Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and MMA, and talk about what makes them different. In these sports, you can't fake it. You can't buy strength. You have to earn it through discipline, hard work, and getting back up when you're knocked down. So that's why many people are drawn to them right now. We've got a great lineup of guests today, including two professional fighters who know this world inside, and Dr. Slowinski will introduce them. We're ready to go.
All right, well, one professional for sure. So Scott Dance is here, and I've known Scott for how many years?
Oh, easily
At least 10.
11, 12 years.
Yeah, about that.
Think
So
at least
Scott,
10.
I'll give you a chance to introduce, but clearly, if you just look at his ears alone, somebody who's definitely done martial arts and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And then it's my honor to have my son, Roman Slowinski, who's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and Scott, of course, is a black belt and has a gym, District Martial Arts in Arlington. So if you're ever out that way, you have to stop by. So these are our two guys, and we've got some clips. But before we even get into introducing you two, let's start that clip that just kind of, when I think of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, at least in a formal way, let's start with that clip, Producer Victor. They're called jiu-jitsu doors, right? Is that the term, Roman? What's the noun for someone who does jiu-jitsu? I think it's jiu-jitsu doors. But practitioners of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So you have the uniforms on, which are called gis. And then it's like wrestling, but it's not. So with that, I've kind of laid the portrait, the empty portrait for you, and you guys can paint from your experience of what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is and what it isn't. So we'll start with Scott, the black belt, because of seniority, and then we'll go to the brown belt right after. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. And I know Roman knows the answer to the question you asked.
Of course he does.
He was just turning his mic off.
It's a nerdy answer, so
It
I don't
is.
want to answer it.
But answer it. Just be nerdy.
Well, you were close. Isn't it like Jujitero?
He knows it's not it, isn't it? He knows exactly what it is. And yes, you were close. It's a Jujitero. By the way, the clip that I liked about that too, that's quite fitting for this. Should I call you Dr. Slowinski? Should I say Patrick? What should I say?
We've known each other forever.
I know. I just, it's your show. What I liked about the clip was the two guys you showed was Mika Galvao and Roberto Jimenez, who, in my opinion, they both really stylistically, right, for people listening who, if they're not familiar with this martial art, although that's like the sport of the martial art, those two really, in my opinion, embody like the pure jiu-jitsu style within the realm of the like the competitive sports side of things, because this may plug into, like, you laid the groundwork and I can push us whatever direction you think makes sense, but jiu-jitsu is different than wrestling, although it's a grappling martial art. So that means you're going to grab a dude, lowercase w, wrestle him around to the ground, pin him, maneuver to a position of control, and then you're going to submit them. So you don't have to purely use the martial art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game. In fact, it happens a lot where you'll see tournaments in the sport of BJJ, guys with wrestling backgrounds or Sambo, we were talking about Sambo before the show, come in and they use their style, although it's in the game of BJJ, and they beat people. Well, anyways, sidebar comment. The two guys you showed, I think, are like exemplary Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu stylistic athletes.
So what is the big difference between wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? I mean, can anyone who wrestles do BJJ and vice versa? Roman, what do you think?
I think as far as can anybody do jiu-jitsu if they have a background in wrestling, I think those are the most successful ones, in my opinion. If you have a strong foundation in wrestling, you have an automatic advantage, obviously, in stand-up where a lot of jiu-jitsu athletes lack that. And then on top of that, you have the intensity needed to push because that comes along with the rigorous training sessions in the wrestling room. I think it's harder for just plain jiu-jitsu guys to transition into wrestling because one, why would you? Um, Unless you're in high school or college. And two, the rule sets are completely different, especially if you're accustomed to, lying on your back, which, I mean, that's just like a loser thing to do if you're just lying on your back, hence the necessity of good wrestling. But like, I don't know why you would go into wrestling if you're already a, a pretty solid jiu-jitsu athlete. Typically, it's the opposite. You'll find the most successful jiu-jitsu guys right now that are up and coming, like former D1 athletes in wrestling.
Awesome. So in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu there, and I know a lot of this because I took Roman to all these tournaments and practice, and I learned a lot just from being a parent watching. And of course, I don't know near as much. But one of the things that's interesting about Jiu-Jitsu that I think sets it apart from many of the other martial arts is that there are only five belts. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has set a standard for excellence over time. I remember talking to my friends who did Taekwondo, for example. One week they would have one color belt, and then the next month they'd have another one, or the next week they'd have another color, and they were just constantly getting promoted. That's not the case in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Scott. Why is that? Why is it so hard to become a brown, but even a brown belt? Roman is taking him several years, and even your black belt is taking you a while. Why is that?
Well, I think what you're describing is within the other. Well, I suppose taking a step back, and I don't want to cast dispersions at the other martial arts, but I think some of what you're describing in Taekwondo or karate or others who do this is that I think the business of giving people a reward relatively quickly, I think like that profit incentive to keep people engaged and helping with customer retention in small businesses, I think that's where that comes from. But yes, to your point, there are five belts in adult Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There are kids belts, and kids, I think it's fair to keep them engaged when kids can go from one sport to the other, and it's mom or dad wants to keep them in a martial art long term. They have to impose a little discipline on the kid till they're adults anyways, whatever. For adults, it's white, blue, purple, brown, and black. And then there's gradients of black belt that continue for
The difference between those belts is huge, right?
it is, and it'll take you about 2 years to get each one. There are lots of outliers of folks who get promoted a little bit more quickly, but it's about 1.5 to 2 years per belt. That's pretty standard if you're staying in one place. And Roman and I both in our, I'd say our paths to for me, definitely up to brown belt. And I know for Roman too, travel around a little bit. Roman had school. I moved myself for careers and stuff, moving around to academies. And if you're not in front of a professor who can track you and get to know you and then sanction you as a belt underneath their community, it takes a little bit of trust from a person. So if you're moving around, that can push some of those timelines a little bit. But yeah, it's different. Having done this for 20 years, I guess my mind initially jumps to it's more of a merit-based system. You really have to earn the belts. There's no secret sauce. You don't have to be, a ninja. You don't have to be beating everyone up. That helps, but you don't have to do it. And by the way, this is relevant because in our martial art too, like it's common, like you're going to spar, you're going to practice jiu-jitsu. And I think you kick this conversation off with it's a combat sport, but people aren't getting punched or kicked or kneed or whatever, errant things happen, but it's very physical in nature. But because we don't take blows to the head like the UFC, we can actually practice it. And that's touching upon the merit-based nature of this whole martial art, which is that like you're going to practice and you just got to like show up. at the end of the day. I mean, the hard part is people sticking to a thing for about 10 years.
There's a general rule in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that it's a life commitment to the sport, and it's more than. You said something interesting. First of all, Jiu-Jitsu is known as the gentle, what is it? A gentle art.
Gentle art, the gentle
I don't know
way.
how gentle it is, but to me, it's more of like chess. It's like a physical chess. When Roman was telling me as he was growing up all the different moves he was learning, and it was sort of like a chess move, right? If your opponent does this, then you do this, and it's a lot of mental work with you guys. But then you said something interesting. You don't call them coaches, you call them professors.
Yeah,
And
when someone reaches
I
the
think
rank of
that,
black belt, they're
I
a
mean,
professor.
from Brazilian, Portuguese, professor is still like teacher, right? But to me in English, it even makes more sense for you guys because you're actually teaching a very complicated um, discipline, if you will, and it changes all the time. And just watching Roman's practices, there's so many different moves. And now that Roman's a teacher himself, he's teaching people these moves. So it's quite interesting. Roman, when did you start? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story when you started going and why you stayed in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu over 10 years, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's going on to year 12. I believe I started when I was around 12 and a half, 13. It's
Mhm.
back in Arlington, Virginia at Nova MMA, which Scott was at. That's where he and I met.
Your first
And then
teacher, your first professor.
yeah, yeah, and I got into it because you made me go, and I had nothing else to do with my time. And so I just went there and I hated it in the beginning because I'm smaller than a lot of the people there. I mean, granted, I was 12, but I started off with the kids' classes and then eventually ended up going to, training with the adults at like, I don't know, was it 13 or 14, something like that. And it was interesting to me because I didn't have any physical attributes I could rely on. A lot of people that go into jiu-jitsu will spaz out. They'll use excessive force and strength because they don't know what they're doing. I didn't have any of that, so I had to adapt faster and kind of soak up all the technique like a sponge because the only attribute I had was being able to get like really compact and move fast. And so for me, it was of extreme importance to like understand the technique and effectively use it too. And so yeah, that started around 12, 13, and I didn't really start getting serious about it until 16, which is around the time when I got promoted to blue belt by Scott, and then it kind of just continued from
In
there on.
tournaments, I remember all of our weekends driving across the country going to tournaments. Scott, go ahead with the chance of embarrassing Roman, but you've known him and you've been his professor for a while. How has he grown in as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner?
Okay, let me formulate my statement here. So by the way, I wanted to respond to Roman. He didn't have size and strength, but he had a lot of mobility and awareness and an intellect to pick up the subtleties of the martial art, which if you're not going to have strength and size, you're going to need something. So you find and I think this is how I'm going to connect myself to my answer to your question. How has he grown? I mean, look at him now. He's got in a great PhD program. He's teaching now. He's probably teaching actual college classes. I think you are, right, Roman?
I was before.
There
I'm
you
not
go.
right now.
And he's teaching jujitsu. So it's obviously he's on a great path. Um, but if I can link what I was saying a moment ago, um, yeah. So okay, like you learned a lot about yourself, and you got what I thought was really cool about Roman early on, and he's always had this too. Is like he got super passionate about the martial art. And Patrick, you mentioned that earlier, where there's like lifelong commitments. You'll see quite often, and for your listeners, I own an academy. I've been in I've had a couple different lenses to look at when it comes to the martial art and like the the different lanes of the community, if you will. And as I'm a business owner at District Martial Arts, like you mentioned, and you see people come and go. Some people, this just isn't, they don't really get bit by that bug that others, Roman, for example, has been bitten by. And you can tell that it's something he's going to be wanting to be involved in for the rest of his life. Um, but I think that the passion for trying to understand the complexity and all the nuances, you mentioned it, it's like chess. I think it's a solid metaphor, analogy, call that what you want, for the like the strategy, all the just the understanding all the ways you can be successful, you can win in jiu-jitsu. It's truly limitless. I mean, none of us are ever really going to completely master it, but Roman, I've known him from preteen to teen to young adult, college student to, are we calling him an adult now?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an adult. He's a young adult, younger.
Try my best.
Yeah, he's an adult. It's like anyone else in life. Like we go through all these different phases of life, and like he's similar to me in a lot of ways. Where like the one thing that I've done, by the way, even though I think Roman said he didn't choose to do it originally, but he chose to keep doing it, and he chooses to keep doing it now. I'm when I started, I was 18, and I chose Brazilian Jiu Jitsu as something I wanted to do, and I haven't stopped doing it since then. So for me, it is a lifelong thing. But I think it's really cool to see Roman go through all these like phases in life and grow and like pursue different challenges and keep training. And soon he's going to get a black belt. It'll happen soon. He's been training long enough. It's each of the belts that you get, I think it's like renewing your vows. It keeps you like fired up and motivated. But even at that point, you just keep going. So when we do the next podcast episode in 10 more years, we can do a check-in on Roman and me and see if we're still going.
Well, I really appreciate the background and the context you guys have laid out, because it's such a complex and beautiful sport, and a lot of people just dismiss it, I think, as a form of wrestling, in uniforms, which would be martial arts uniforms, which you call gis, as we showed in the intro video. But I want to show you people practicing jujitsu type moves out in the streets.
This is my dad. They're fighting right now. I'm 19.
Oh, fuck, purple. Good, I'm down. I'm down. Fucking. You on camera? Okay.
I'm recording the thing.
Are you done? Are you done?
He's done.
Wait for the count.
Okay, I think we can stop right there. All right, so he's got control there, and he did a couple maneuvers. So what did he do in jiu-jitsu, Roman, that could be called jiu-jitsu-like jiu-jitsu?
I didn't see the beginning part of the clip because Victor was zooming in on it and it kind of paused. But I think he had control of the neck. Again, I'm just assuming it.
What happened there? If you were able to see
He looked like like Roman said, it clipped up a little bit, but as soon as it picked up, he was in a front headlock position, which interestingly is like a wrestling style. It's like a wrestling. The thing about these are just like naming labels. These are all grappling forms, but we have that in jiu-jitsu, and it's very prominent in wrestling, because it's just when two dudes go to grapple and fight, there are going to be only so many scenarios. So it's pick a sport, pick a rule set. Anyways, he put him in a front headlock, and then what looked like at one point, it did break up a little bit, but I saw the finishing piece. He grabbed this guy with his head, like Roman said, and then he rolled him backwards, basically flipped him over, landed in a pinning position, and I have no idea what the context was in the background. Either the guy on camera set up the other person for some views, or they got into something. Yeah, here we go. So yeah, he's grabbing his head, throws him. It was before that, but this is still, he has like a front headlock, like a grip over his neck. And this other guy's done. He's just pinning him.
Yeah, he would have got a couple points in it.
He got a couple points.
Knock it off, and one of the things I've loved about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Roman's journey is the self-discipline, right? And I wanted you guys to share a little bit about getting hurt. I think people need to understand that anytime you do martial arts or a sport, you're going to get hurt. But I had no idea until Roman started doing it, and how often you guys can get hurt from quote unquote just wrestling. So Scott, you were always hurt.
I can go first if you want.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've lost count of how many times I've gotten hurt. However, and Roman probably knows a lot of the stories. I can tell you like 2 or 3. The thing is, they hurt more mentally, but whatever. It's emotionally, but you get over that fast. That's the self-discipline part you talked about. Thankfully, my injuries are generally pretty mild in nature. I haven't had anything that I haven't been able to recover from in less than 2 months. Thank God. But part of that is also like I train in an intelligent way. And I have thankfully the experience and the awareness to know how to avoid some things that can be truly catastrophic. But yeah, it's a physical rough sport. We're talking about combat sports. When we were talking about the gentle art earlier, like I asked myself, it's gentle compared to what? And I think it had to do with I mean, because this is a Japanese word, jujitsu. I think they were comparing it to like sword fighting samurais. So compared to getting your head cut off, it's yes, everything is gentle, but it's rough because the point of the sport is you're going to collide with another person. You're going to grab their arm. You're going to hand fight. You're going to try to club them to the ground. You saw that clip. That guy grabbed his head. You grab them, whether it's in a sport, training's a little different, but if it's in a sport or in a setting like that, like you grab them with the intent to use it. So it's like you're going to grab it, you're going to hold it. You're using strength. There's a lot of resistance. It's high impact on the body. So and some of that's fun. Like you asked a question or mentioned something earlier about like what keeps us going, and maybe that's what we're getting to here. Like it's some of that. There's like an element of risk in the training room that I think everyone really gets a rush from. You want to stay on that edge of not getting to where you're getting hurt to the best of your ability. You have to learn where that edge is. But I think the way to learn sometimes is to get some bumps and bruises, man.
I would agree, and that's a great parenting tip too. And Roman, you've had some, I mean, for someone who's only done it for about 12 years, I mean, quite a few injuries. Some in competition, some just what you guys call rolling, right? So when you're actually sparring, I guess is a way to do it, to say it. But you can do so many things to your bodies. You can tweak your knees. Other people can tweak your knees, and then you'd be out for a long time, if not permanently. You can break bones. You could get choked out and have some, oxygen loss, worst case scenario. There's a lot of things that can happen in the submissions, and just sparring with each other and tweaking shoulders and elbows and everything else and breaking fingers. It's so I didn't realize because I thought it was just kind of wrestling, and I didn't realize the impact it has on your body. So I want to switch. I think we've got one more video of these street practitioners of jiu-jitsu that we want to have you two critique. Victor, if you got the second one ready.
Can I just say something real quick about the whole injury thing? A word of advice: if you're starting jiu-jitsu, avoid white belts, even though you're a white belt. If you're a seasoned grappler, avoid going with white belts if they're completely crazy. Most of the injuries happen not because they're deliberate. Like most people are not getting hurt from arm bars, unless they're, I guess, stupid and have pride and aren't tapping. Typically, it's completely random things that are outside of your control, like your hand gets caught between the crevice of the mat and your fingers roll backwards. Or you get an elbow to the face, you get a knee to the face, somebody punches you in the nose. And then as far as going with white belts, like 2 years ago, I had to get surgery on my labrum because I also broke my collarbone and I tore my labrum. I was going with this brand new guy. It was his first day. And I was on his back. I was sinking a choke in for like the sixth time or something like that in 5 minutes. I think he was just kind of upset that a much smaller guy. I think he was like six something, 250, kept submitting him. So he stood up to his feet. And in retrospect, I should have just let go. But I did have it sunk in. But he stood up to his feet and then just like dropped to the mat, and all of his weight landed on one shoulder. And that was enough to 250 pounds in one point is enough to do damage, especially when you're smaller. So that put me out for 2 years. Otherwise, I would have continued the journey. But yeah, a lot of it is unavoidable. And if you want to avoid it, avoid the crazy people.
Yeah, well, or at least
I mean, that's just the truth.
well, I think Scott, you own a business, right? So how do you teach the white belts to, act in a way because they're not used to what you guys are used to? They don't have the of a veteran, so they're going to make mistakes. How do you keep them safe and keep your more experienced guys safe?
Okay, so that's a very good question, and I it's not an easy thing to do completely, but I think it becomes the job of the instructor and whoever, let's say the head instructor, the program manager, which in most cases is also going to be the business owner. Something that we do that's like a simple, doesn't mean it's easy, but it's a simple like task is we try to staff our classes where there's a lot of white belts. Cause like Roman said, it's generally the newer folks who aren't aware of how this all works. And it can be kind of scary at first, which again, this goes back to the job of the instructors to like really manage and be like an orchestra conductor to like keep the room well managed, but just a sophisticated skill. But you get these new folks who they don't know how to do that just yet. So like their central nervous system is flaring up. They're scared, and someone's kind of tuning them up. Like Roman said, he submitted this one guy 5 times, and he just had to have that 6th submission, didn't he, Roman? You couldn't have just gone easy on the guy, pull guard. See, that's what I do. That's what I think. If I go with a crazy person, I don't need to like beat them. I know if I really want to, once a month, if I feel like I have to prove a point, I'll do it. And with a smile on my face and try to like, pat him on the butt, like, you did good job, dude. But yeah, like you get to that point eventually where like what are the cost benefits of me trying to just dog out every round for a fight to feel like I'm winning or whatever.
Good. I think tournaments as a gym has to, look at liabilities and everything else and protect people, but also teach them that, hey, you're going to get hurt if you do this sport. Speaking of getting hurt, I think, Victor, we have that second video. And looks like one guy wailing.
Dude.
So not necessarily jiu-jitsu per se, but a definite.
That's like wrestling
takedown.
Yeah, that guy was out on his feet.
So what's the difference for our listeners and people watching of people who maybe know how to pick up somebody and throw them versus what you guys do?
Roman, you smiling? You want to jump on that or you want me to take it?
Yeah, if you could pick up and throw someone on the head, you don't have to do anything else after that. That's why I think wrestling is honestly the best self-defense. But I would suggest it way before jiu-jitsu, because if you could do that, you don't have to do anything else.
Yeah, but your chances of having an opponent that you're going to be able to just pick up and throw, you guys are not super tall or super big. You're really good athletes, but you couldn't just pick up a guy that's 6'5", 250. Just pick him up, could you?
Well, are we talking
Maybe
about
Scott
street
could.
scenarios?
Just on the street, and someone comes up to you. Can you
I'm
guys
running.
really do that? That's amazing.
I mean,
you asked a question earlier, and at its core, the difference between wrestling and jiu-jitsu is in jiu-jitsu you submit people. In wrestling, you take them down and pin them to the mat, which is like what Roman's speaking to here, and why wrestling is a really effective grappling system. Like the way the matches, like the sport, which has a major influence over how that martial art is expressed. I'm going to call it a martial art for the sake of this conversation. It starts on the feet. It takes place on the feet. And the main, like if we were going to be blunt about what the goal of wrestling is, it's like get the other dude to the ground without you having to get pinned to the ground. So it's like you don't want your back to ever touch the ground in wrestling. There's more to it than that, but that's for all intents and purposes. Let's just say it's that for this conversation. But in jiu-jitsu, your back touches the ground, no big deal. We're going to keep going.
Yeah.
So that's why wrestlers get a little frustrated in jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu guys definitely get frustrated in wrestling. Well, anyways, so like, but in that video, what Roman was kind of joking around about how like, you don't even need jiu-jitsu, you can just throw a guy through the air. That's a wrestling move. The people in jiu-jitsu do that too, but again, it's like we're assigning styles to it. That comes from wrestling. And that dude tossed him on his noggin, didn't he? He landed on the concrete, and he was out on his feet. He was just kind of half alive, half in a haze. It's dangerous doing that too. I don't know if I'd want to be. Actually, I know for a fact I don't want to be on camera dumping a guy on his head.
Yeah, no, that's not.
That's not a good look.
So I want to go back to your guys' journeys through jiu-jitsu and martial arts and being in gyms and stuff. And Roman, you've had the opportunity to train in different countries, and so has producer Victor, who has spent time in Europe and Eastern Europe. So Roman, when you first started, you were in Arlington, in Virginia, and then you went off to Kazakhstan. Where else have you trained jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, so I started in Virginia and then continued a little bit in Kazakhstan when I was around 13. Came back to Virginia, and then obviously you and I lived in Russia. So I trained there for about a year. I think I visited a gym in Poland.
And Georgia?
I think it was right before. Oh, right. Yeah, in the country of Georgia. Yeah, so I've trained at a handful of gyms outside the country as well as within the U.S. By far, the most interesting experience was Russia because I feel like a lot of not every jiu-jitsu gym, but I feel like a lot of the training is kind of soft. Like people complain about, oh, I'm so tired or whatever, and they're not really maybe they like sat out a few rounds, they rolled for maybe 45 minutes. There it would be, especially during competition prep, it would be like 3 hours back to back, no breaks. And when it came to drilling, if your technique was poor, our coach would walk around with a PVC pipe and like smack the crap out of people. You get yelled at in Russian, but that kind of made it more interesting to me because it kept you in check. And if you were being lazy, they would put you in place. Not like they weren't beating people up. I mean, they knew what they were signing up for, but it fostered a different type of discipline in that you got to push through it even when people are yelling at you and hitting you with pipes. And then
Not metal
that's
pipes,
not
plastic pipes.
not yeah, correct. And
Just PVC. Just
Just
PVC.
it
clarifying.
is PVC. It hurts a little bit, but
Stings really doesn't leave a
anyways,
bruise.
So what, real quick, Roman, then we'll go to Scott. What's kind of the difference in most of the countries you were in Central and Eastern Europe
mhm.
compared to how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is kind of trained and treated in the States?
I think it depends on the gym because also the meta, so to speak, has changed in the US. A lot of the best grapplers now are from the US, whereas before and during the time I was training, a lot of the top athletes were Brazilian because now we have really strong jiu-jitsu on the East Coast and then parts of the Midwest, um, and obviously California. And I would say I think it's become I th I want to say that the U.S. is like number one right now in terms of the top athletes. I mean, look at Gordon Ryan, look at Mike Musumeci, look at Andrew Tackett, those guys. Obviously, they're phenomenal Brazilians like Mika Galvao. But I would say as a whole, the difference between the cultures is exactly that. It's like the way people interact with one another where they're usually more aggressive there. Um, they don't really care how you feel. If you're tired too bad, you just keep going. Again, it depends on the gym. The more competitive the gym is, the less likely they are to kind of like coddle their teammates and let people sit out. For example, like the gym I'm at is affiliated with Atos, my coach is a third degree black belt under Andre Galvao. So if you don't know who that is, he's a top guy in jiu-jitsu. Really, really good. There we don't sit out at all. If we have odd numbers, then the lowest belt sits out. So it really depends on the gym, but I would say just to summarize, it would be the intensity, the aggression, and just constantly pushing each other, even if you don't like what you're hearing. But ultimately, it does come down to the gym because
Are you glad for the journey that you've had living in these different countries? And your dad was a diplomat, that's why you lived in different countries. But
yeah.
um, were you grateful for that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu experience in these other countries? Just real quick, so we can have
Mhm.
Professor Scott critique his own video that we're going to show.
For sure. Yeah. It not only the culture itself, but also the technique. You'll notice that, especially with the Russians, they're heavier on the wrestling. Especially they come from sambo backgrounds. Sambo, judo, they integrate a lot more of that. I'd say they do a lot more standing. But again, things have shifted in the US with people like catching up on wrestling and realizing the importance of it. So you'll see less guard players and more people wrestling, which is how
Fast.
it should be, honestly. But yeah, I think it's also the type of jujitsu. The like Eastern European countries are more they do a lot more stand up, but again, I think they're kind of like on par. If anything, I still believe that the US has gotten much better than everybody else because they caught on to the wrestling, they've caught on to the leg entanglements, and really honing in on strengthening conditioning. So they're taking it to, a more competitive level with a different approach now.
Well, you mentioned Sambo and producer Victor, who does so many different things. You got a little clip or a photo of us for your days in Russia doing Sambo?
I do have a generic clip that I can show just for those who are not familiar with the sport. And while I'm demonstrating that clip, definitely want to comment on a few things here, right? Sambo was great experience. For those who don't know, it's really centered around self-defense, right? And I think a lot of people that resort to this sport in Russia, at least from my experience, look for something very pragmatic, something you can apply on a daily basis. I guess it's part of the Russian mentality. And I did practice martial arts back in middle school and even junior. And I remember those were really kind of showcasing, right? You do different moves to demonstrate and impress, mostly centered around the technique. But Sambo was focused on, okay, you don't have a weapon, how do you defend yourself? Which was pretty cool. And on that note, throughout my martial arts journey, the latest being Muay Thai and a little bit of MMA, I just wanted to comment real quick on the community you guys built. I think that Jiu-Jitsu has one of the most unique and tight communities out of all sports. Again, arguably only MMA comes close, but what's interesting is how many high-profile figures, including influencers and even tech leaders like Mark Zuckerberg, have taken it up. So I'm also really curious to hear if this growing visibility in mainstream interest ultimately a net positive for the sport.
Yeah, Scott, I think you
Yeah,
can
I think it is.
thinking of Joe Rogan and Anthony Bourdain just for starters.
That's right. I mean, in the the massive audience these guys have, it's like branding and PR. If we had lobbying agencies on the behalf of BJJ, we would go with piles of money to Joe Rogan. He just does it for free because he loves it. There's no better way to get to the right demographic for the type of folks we want. I mean, we'll take anybody, but you understand what I'm saying. So yeah, no, it's definitely, I think it draws more eyeballs to what we are doing, and not everyone's going to gravitate towards this, although quite a few people will. It's like a call to adventure. There's like a challenge to it that I think, I don't know what the percentages of people in the let's say the US, but anywhere, who hear that and they're like, I want to try that stuff. Who the type of person that wants to go in there and see what that's all about and then sticks with it. I mean, these are our people, right, Roman? Like we to the community aspect, like you said. I mean, you form this bond with folks when you like go in and you try to break each other's arms and you choke them, and then like they tap out, and then you tap out, then you high five and knuckles, you smile, and you hang out for 25 minutes after class and talk. Like you really, I don't know. Maybe there's like a biological explanation for it, but it's like this interesting, cool bond it's very unique. You get very close with people when you do.
Very fraternal, and you also have women, more and more women doing jujitsu.
Tons of women.
But there is still the majority are men, and there's a great fraternity of people trying to better themselves and reach certain goals, and you can do it together. You can learn from each other, and so we're running out of time. But I want to quickly show Victor. Thank you for that really good question. Our guest here, Professor Scott Dance, doing a little dance of his own. So if you can show.
God, what is this? Okay, here we go.
The anklet, the green and yellow ankle brace, or anklet.
Yeah, Michael immediately pulls there as soon as grips are established. Again, this is a 10-minute black belt match in Copa Elite under the IBJJF rules, so heel hooks are legal, both sides.
Scott,
huge depth of technique available.
Pressuring into those butterflies. Michael doing a nice job keeping his legs wide, waiting for Scott to make a mistake on his entry, and looking to enter into those grips, leg lock, leg entanglement exchanges here.
And they're doing a good job keeping tight pressure, doing a really high kind of variation of a knee shield, looking to invert under the legs. I'm curious to see. That didn't look like a knee bar entry to me. Looked like an outside heel hook entry.
Yep.
Or a 50-50 entry.
And we see that from guys that are playing this wide-legged open guard position that Michael is playing here with his knees up towards his chest.
Yeah, it's so hard to pass that position. Scott putting hands on the face. Curious to see if the referee allows him to have the open hand or if he's going to force the closed hand. Done a great job trying to hip flop pass over, but Michael does a nice job inverting, gets the knees back in front, back into his guard.
Scott settling into that headquarters passing position. trying to keep a lot of pressure on Michael's bottom leg so that he can't invert the way that he is. And when Michael starts getting into that inversion, Scott's doing a nice job breaking the exchange open.
Yeah, that inversion is
All
so
right, I
good
think we
for
can
Michael.
stop right there. And Scott, you can finish. Tell us how that match went. Did you win?
I did.
And
It was a
something
close match. What's that?
something I noticed right away, if you don't know anything about sport, and I have only known vicariously through you guys, that's like a different language that the commentators are talking. I mean, you have to know the jargon, you have to know the moves. They are they are just catching everything that you guys are doing and just showing that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a very complex sport. So you went on to win this match, and did you get in trouble for putting your hand on his face?
That's fair play. That's fair play. That's called range control. He's trying to move it. So he's trying to. So one thing they said, they're like this. They mentioned the guy's name is Michael, who was my opponent. Who's a very good athlete. They made a comment about like how Michael was going to try to catch me making a mistake on the way in, which I didn't. But that's what he has to do as I move into his, because when he sits back like that and he throws his legs up in the air and his hands are kind of they're mobile to like intercept something, that dude's basically baiting me in to fight. I mean, we could have a whole sidebar conversation about this, and Roman sort of alluded to some of the nuances of jiu-jitsu sport, but he sits back and he basically, to give him credit, like that forces me to fight there because I can't avoid that interaction, although he did sit down. But I now have to step in, which does mean when I go in there, like I'm walking in and out of potential traps. So I'm what you saw, and I was kind of stepping in and out, and like you kind of jokingly said, I'm going to be dancing around, which I kind of was. I was moving in and out of his traps and navigating my way through it. And all of those little interactions do have like code names and jargon that those commentators, who, by the way, I've heard them, they've covered those events lots of times. They're very good.
Yeah, I mean, they know so much about
Intricate, right?
Very intricate. Well, we're gonna wrap up with just a couple of comments from both of you. Roman, your advice to younger folks that are looking to follow Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a sport. Should they do it? Because you were talking about wrestling. They could do both, I think.
Yeah, they could definitely do both. It really just depends on the person, but one thing I was actually told recently that kind of changed my mind about things is that people will often say jiu-jitsu is for everybody, but I actually think what I was told by somebody is that it was actually my coach, is that jiu-jitsu is for anybody, but it's not for everybody. So it's the opposite in that, anybody can do it, but not everybody will stay and not everybody will enjoy it. So my best advice is you're gonna suck and you're not gonna know what you're doing, and
For a long time.
For a little bit.
it's gonna make things difficult. But if you find it interesting and you slowly pick things up, then I recommend you stick with it, because you don't really get good up until like maybe mid blue belt, because in the beginning it's more just getting beaten up and seeing what people are doing to you. And then later on, as you get to blue belt, you kind of have a fundamental overview of the moves. And then with purple, you have a whole game established. Brown, you're teaching. In black belt, you're like an expert at all the fundamentals and specific sharp games. So you're gonna suck in the beginning. That's inevitable. And it's gonna feel weird, and you're not gonna know what you're doing. But if you do find it fun, just because of perhaps the community, if that's your motivator, stay. And then the byproduct would be perhaps you get decent at jiu-jitsu.
Thank you, Roman. So Roman Slowinski on our show tonight. Of course, my son, same last name. I've been with him on this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu journey, and I hope it continues for a long time. And wish that I don't get any calls that we're going to the emergency room or anything. And Scott Dance, black belt for a while now. He's got his own gym that you have some partners with, District Martial Arts in Arlington, Virginia. So check it out. Scott, last word to you about anyone looking at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a sport.
You should try it. If you're listening to this and you've thought about it, and it's kind of been an idea, but either you found an excuse or maybe you just weren't sure, just go try it. And like Roman said, it's okay if you're not good at it. Like if you're just going in to try it and you expect to be good at it, that's kind of silly to begin with anyways. The whole thing is meant to be humbling, and it will humble you. But if you go in with a humble attitude, you'll outlast everyone else anyways. So I would say, like, it's kind of my way of taking, I'm just jujitsuing Roman's answer a little bit. I agree with him insofar as the experience. I see some people struggle when they like have high expectations for themselves, but like you haven't earned the right to have those expectations. Come in, accept that everyone else knows more than you. Be okay with that. Be safe, be smart, make it fun. Like you're learning a skill. So if you don't have to keep doing it, like Roman said, but like check it out, see if it's a good fit, and just don't get hurt.
I'll tell you, just closing on this, that I've done a lot of work with other psychologists on kind of the how younger men, particularly in the United States, seem to get shafted quite a bit. They don't seem to fit in. They get blamed for a lot of things. They don't really know what they should do with their lives. And that seems to me that an activity like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it does a couple of things for you guys, and that is builds fraternity, builds self-esteem. It gives you something to shoot for, and it really lets you be a man. Because it does emphasize strength and physical strength, muscular strength, mental strength, and it's okay in the gym to be tough. But also to have, the kind of friendship that you have with those people that are working on the mat with you there in Jiu-Jitsu. So again, thank you to Scott Dance and Roman Slowinski for coming on our show tonight. And I can't wait to see you guys again. Take care.
Thank you. This was great.
Thanks for having us.
In a world full of noise, clarity is power. Stay informed, stay aware, stay top of mind.